Hare Krishna. On behalf of the ISKCON Ministry Foundation, we'd like to welcome everyone for another interview on the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. My name is Krishna Prabhupada Books, and today we have special guests with us. His Grace Adi Purush Prabhu from the Vrindavan Institute of Higher Education. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Looking very much forward to our conversation because I know you personally and you have been studying and teaching Srila Prabhupada's books for many, many years. Adi Purush Prabhu, originally from the Ukraine, came in touch with the movement in 1989 and later on in 92 received initiation from His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. And one of his first services was translating Srila Prabhupada's books. Already there we can see, like if you translate books, you really absorb in Prabhupada's teachings into the Ukrainian language, right? And also translated and served as a secretary for His Holiness Niranjan Maharaj, traveled with him. And since 1999, Prabhu lives in Vrindavan and serves at the Vrindavan Institute of Higher Education. And I think since 25 years, Adi Purush Prabhu is teaching Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, and has helped many hundreds, if not thousands of devotees to go deeper into the study of Srila Prabhupada's books. So we're very honored and happy to have you with us.
Thank you. Even I'm inspired to hear such an introduction.
Well,
all by devotees' blessings.
Thank you. We would like to hear from you how you came in touch with Srila Prabhupada's books. Maybe you remember what was the first book you read and how did it change your life?
Yes. The first book that I read was Ishopanishad. It was a small book. It was in the 80s. Those days, they didn't have, this was the very first translated book, and it was translated by someone who was not a native speaker, and it read very weirdly. It sounded very weird, but it added just to its esoteric and mystic atmosphere. The book was called, it was supposed to be Indian thought, but basically it sounded like, even the title, subtitle sounded like the book of Indian thinking, or something like this, which, like, what is it? He would try to read it open. And that was my first encounter with Srila Prabhupada's books. And the only thing I carried out was that chanting Hare Krishna is good. That's the only thing. Probably, that's enough, or probably Prabhupada would be happy that this is
the main message.
Yes.
Yeah, the essence.
And I think this is what I started. I was a Buddhist at that time, I think, already. And I think this is what I added to my Buddhist practice. I was sometimes singing Hare Krishna or chanting Hare Krishna. But in terms of philosophy, I didn't get it. And it was not until somewhat later that my friend gave me the Bhagavad-Gita as it is. So a small book like this, printed underground illegally in the USSR, because devotees were persecuted by the communist regime, and it was prohibited to either read or own or anything. So I read it, and I was still technically a Buddhist, and Srila Prabhupada has basically philosophically defeated me. So I had read a lot. I was studying different philosophies. I was studying philosophy, logic, and I was trying to find the meaning of life. And basically, Srila Prabhupada has defeated all my ideas, and maybe by 2/3 of the Bhagavad-Gita as it is, I was put over the barrel, or against the wall, and I didn't like it, I was reluctant. And I said, okay, what to do, truth is truth. So whether I like it or not, I have to accept what to do. Yeah, God is a person. Person is beyond, higher than the impersonal oneness, and we need to serve him. Okay, so then we had to philosophically accept. And then only later I found devotees, and they engaged me in devotional service, practical, and then I got some realization to back it up. So books for me is the gateway with how Krishna extended his mercy to me.
Beautiful. So it really had an effect, on your whole way of life. And although you were already on a spiritual path, it really made clear which direction you want to go.
Yes, yes.
And I found it quite fascinating. You want to add something?
This is what Prabhupada quotes in his introduction to the Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Maya mugda jivar nahi swata Krishna gyan, jivara kripaya koila, Krishna Veda Puran. This is Madhya 21-2. So Prabhupada quotes this verse to say that for a conditioned soul, knowledge of Krishna, Krishna consciousness will not manifest on its own. Therefore, to give living entities mercy, Krishna has given them Veda Purana. So if you want mercy, here it is. Like behind you, the whole bookshelf of mercy is there.
Full of mercy.
Full of mercy. Yes.
What I wanted to mention is that I find it fascinating that one of your first services then was also to translating the books, as we mentioned before. Would you like to share about this time in your life? I mean, I can imagine if you daily, study the books and have to translate them, find the proper words, that also must be quite an experience which deepened your understanding of Prabhupada's teaching. It's very helpful, of course. It forces you to analyze the smallest nuances of each sentence. You have to really understand not just the words, but the meaning behind them. Still, I would also say that the best thing I remember from those times is not going through all the books, just reading them, but having a wonderful association with devotees who were also absorbed in the philosophy and sincerely trying to bring the nectar to in their respective languages, and having serious discussions with similarly minded devotees. This is what brings the books, all the books, to life. Because even though my whole service was reading and repeating after having understood the books, it was still rather technical. You can translate, whoever does the simultaneous translation may know that sometimes you can even solve crossword puzzles at the same time or do some other things at the same time. So it still leaves some part of your brain free to do something else. So therefore, only discussions with friendly devotees involves your whole personality and involves your heart, and that allows us to really go deeply into Krishna Katha. That's a very, profound statement you made, that actually in the association of the devotees, then this wisdom or this knowledge becomes more accessible. And that's what you experienced in the very beginning when translating, discussing with other devotees. So naturally, your journey later on brought you also to teaching, which of course is all about study books in the association of devotees. How would you describe your personal study? Because I mean, if you're as a teacher, you have been, I'm sure, studying the scriptures in order to prepare, but then also your personal study. How is the difference between your personal study and preparing for teaching? Would you like to share about this? It's the joke that Bhaktivedanta Maharaj likes to make, speaking about one professor who's talking to his colleague and says that I have such a dull group of students this year. I explained the material to them once. I explained it to them twice. I myself understood it, and they still don't understand it.
So this is the illustration of the power of explaining things to others that it helps you, that even you can understand by explaining things to others. So actually you benefit probably the most by teaching and explaining. So it is in itself a very powerful way of studying. Of course, to prepare for teaching, one of the most important things, as you may know from the teacher training courses, one of the main parts of preparation is to see what is your focus. What do you want? What is your what are your aims and objectives? What do you want the students to get out of this lesson? So study will proper teaching involves study, which means determining what is the main thing that we learn from here. So this also in itself is one of the study skills, figuring out the essence, preferably just one point from a section, because as you have heard, less is more. If you have one focus, then hopefully people will remember this one focus. If you have 20 points, we don't know if they remember anything. So this is one thing. Another thing, yes, of course, very, very kindly we have our like right now I'm doing the Southern Ocean of the Nectar of Devotion here in Ljubljana, and even before this book was printed, Banu Maharaj has kindly provided me the manuscript of the translation, and you can see that this really helps to see the nitty-gritty in depth, what's the material is about, and the whole depth and width of these beautiful jewels. So it helps if you yourself understand what you're talking about. So this is another important point for study that I want to understand myself. I basically, as Burjan Prabhu asked once, our Radha Govinda Maharaj, who is famous for doing Bhagavad Saptahas as instructed by Srila Prabhupada. So Burjan Prabhu asked him, how do you study Srimad Bhagavatam? And he replied, oh, I do not study, I relish. So that's sort of the best study, yes, that you relish, you drink the juice, the nectarian juice of these wonderful things. So it can be intellectual, finding the philosophical framework of what we are speaking about, and it's very beautiful, like the Bhagavad-Gita. I heard from Purnachanda Maharaj in his Bhakti Shastri course, it all suddenly clicks and makes sense, but also many other, the application, you see what is the application, how it transforms life, and also super attractive qualities of Krishna himself. So all these things are some of the parts of study, relishing on these different levels.
So the more you yourself really deeply understand the subject matter and relish it, of course, then naturally you're able to present it in a way that it touches the heart of the students. Yeah. In a systematic study of Prabhupada's books, we have this study aims, the aims of Shastric study.
Yes.
It's the knowledge, understanding, preaching application, and so on. Would you like to talk on this? Why do we have these aims, or what is for you personally, what you would like to focus, or do you focus in your teaching when you teach?
These aims were developed on the turn of the millennium by the VTE group and in the VHE and MI and by the senior teachers, and whoever came in touch with these aims, you can see that this is something that provides you a framework to learn is to get the answers, but to get the answers you first need to have the questions. So these goals, they provide you the system of questions, like you have a bookshelf behind you, so it helps if you have some shelves where you put different books. Okay, Chaitanya Charitamrita here, Bhagavatam here, other books here. So this way you can have some system, and you can also access these. So these aims help in that. When I was starting to teach, basically my main aim was taste. taste, appreciation, and realization. That was my main interest. Then, with time, now probably one of the most interesting parts for me is to have personal application. Personal application, what helps. It's always been my interest, but now it's even more what helps people transform their lives. So, in short, these are some of the. But preaching will be preaching application. What are the arguments? Will be very interesting to other devotees. For some devotees, it will be a very elegant framework, philosophical framework for Krishna consciousness, which helps us to become more convinced. Faith and conviction is another aim. And deepen our faith in this process of Krishna consciousness, faith and realization through seeing the logical elegance of this philosophy. So you will see that different devotees will have different emphases, and that's okay. That's why Krishna has different. That's why we are all individuals.
One of the study aims is understanding the mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada. And as we know, Prabhupada also mentioned that he would forever live in his books. Would you like to share some personal realization on this? What does it mean to discover and understand the mood and mission of Prabhupada, and how did it have an impact in your life?
This is probably one of the realizations that I brought out of my BBT work by going through Srila Prabhupada's every word and comma. Over the years, I developed a certain feeling that Srila Prabhupada is a wonderful personality close to my heart, whom you can really feel in his books. As Srila Prabhupada says in the first canto, you can meet Krishna on the pages of the Bhagavatam. So that's one thing, but before you meet Krishna, you will meet Srila Prabhupada. Yes? And therefore, for somebody who reads Srila Prabhupada's books very thoroughly, there's no question, is Prabhupada present or not present, or what is Prabhupada's mood and mission? There's no question. It's a direct realization. It's not theoretical. It's very, very palpable and clear realization that you get. It also helps if you study more and you study other books, like, for example, by Srila Prabhupada's disciples, or maybe by Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers. If you have studied, if you have thoroughly read Srila Prabhupada's books, you will have a very sensitive tuning fork inside your heart, and you will see, okay, this may be the same mission or roughly the same mission, but the mood is to this side or to that side. You will see very clearly what is Srila Prabhupada's mood in how he presents his mission, what he emphasizes. It's even it comes to almost ironic occasions when, for example, you hear a word or an expression and you think, can't be that Prabhupada used this word. It's not possible. And then you check and you see, yes, actually Prabhupada, in translations, in some translations, you can see that, oh yeah, true, Prabhupada used some other word, and it's just in the translation they tried to make it more bright, and actually it's not what Prabhupada is using. So Prabhupada is definitely present in his books, on the pages of his books, and you can have his association not only on scheduled time, but anytime you are ready to extend your hand and take his books into your hands. Very merciful.
Yeah, we can hear that you really have that realization, and it's quite amazing also how reading Srila Prabhupada's books really gives us a certain vision how to see the world. And that's another expression that we have, the Shastra Chakshu, how when we study, then our intelligence becomes more sharp, and we start to see the world in a different way. Would you like to talk about this a bit, that Shastra Chakshu principle? I mean, you have been studying for so many years. Your vision must be quite in the line of the Shastra.
Unfortunately, I have to humbly say that failures also exist, and it's one of the higher level goals. Shastra Chakra is one of the highest level goals. This is in one of his versions. Rasamandala Prabhu has put this knowledge line into 3 levels. One is knowledge, just information, then understanding, when you can explain, and Shastra Chakra is the highest level of realized knowledge when it transforms into your vision. So, for example, we hear Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. You will see Krishna Yam Shema Sundaram. You will see Shema Sundara at every moment when your eyes are smeared with prema. So, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm taking very long for some reason due to my anarthas. So therefore, maybe my realization is not so so great, but at least it helps to have proper, how to say, framework to see what's happening at any time around you. And I remember one of the earliest inspirations for studying the Gita was reading some academic professor about devotees of Krishna, where he said that devotees of Krishna always have their friend Krishna with them because they know the Gita by heart, and in every situation they can remember some verse, and this way they can associate with Krishna. So, wow, I should do this. This sounds cool. Oh, sounds good. Why not? Of course.
Now, some devotees, they find it a little hard to read regularly for different reasons. They may face different challenges, like, I don't know, feeling tired or lack of taste or inspiration. What would you tell such devotees, or how could we inspire devotees to read more often, especially on a regular basis?
Study groups. For example, you can have some WhatsApp or whatever system you are using, meeting halls. Nowadays there are there's so many ways to get in touch. Despite the Kali Yuga drawbacks, it also has some things we can use. So some study group with a friend, or physically, just have some meeting with somebody, or even like within your family. If you have twice a week or 3 times a week or how many times a week, even for 10 minutes, for example, if you share something on some topic or something interesting, even if it's 5 minutes. Nowadays, you can also just listen to Prabhupada's books. There are so many audio. Amalabhakta Prabhu Maharaj was the pioneer, but nowadays you have Damodar in Bhaktivedanta Vedic Library and Shikshashtaka Prabhu on tiny.cc/SP108. All Prabhupada's books and all the amazing books in audio, so you can listen to them. And you can find something that you can share and discuss as friends, or you can take turns in trying to teach something. So this way you will get some personal association, and the book, from being 2-dimensional or even 1-dimensional, 1-dimensional means it's just a line, it will turn multi-dimensional and multimedia in the personal association, and will transform into something living. That's also my experience with having friendly discussions, reading books with friends, because it's informal and it converts part of the formal program, because we know, oh, I should, yes, I should. It turns it into something alive, in something real, part of the real life. So, in short, that's probably one of the most important things you can do.
Now, myself, I have been a student in your classes. You were teaching Bhakti Shastri and also part of the Bhakti Vaibhav. And what I really noticed, and it became quite obvious for me, and what I also very much appreciate, is your emphasis on personal application. Before, you briefly mentioned that this is something that's dear to your heart. to help students to really find ways to apply this knowledge. And also, when we come together and study, the aim is not only understanding or knowledge, but actually the transformation of the heart. And that's only possible if we apply. Would you like to give us some tips or some realizations on how we can make sure to apply all this knowledge that Prabhupada gave us?
Well, it's either that, either apply or burn in hell. Where we are, it's either hell, or or hell boredom or whatever. This is material world. So, I'm sorry, I'm joking.
That's another quality we like, your humor, which is there, because sometimes scholars can be very dry, but.
Thank you. Application is in my own interest. This is in our interest. It's just that sometimes we don't see the paths to application. It enters into our living space as something very theoretical, or our experience with the books is too theoretical, or we were forced to read the books artificially, something. And that sort of breaks the flow, breaks the system. So therefore, sometimes we need to discover how these books are alive and very much helpful, very much alive in everybody's existence, can be. One of the helpful guides for that could be Burijan Prabhu's introduction to studying the Bhagavatam, his study method. So he provides several possible questions you can ask to the passage, a very, very deep way to study. For example, what can I apply? Or what, like, if you feel that you are perfect, it's okay, maybe, then you can say, you can ask yourself, what can I draw from this paragraph to teach my friend who is doing this thing wrong, something. What can be applied to our modern ISKCON situation? He's offering some of these, or some topic that you are studying right now. I remember I was reading and I was investigating the topic of prayers, how to pray, what prayers are the best, or community building, or whatever, could be society, or relief from suffering, or going through difficult times, or so many topics. All the topics Prabhupada actually says are there in the Bhagavatam, and he sort of invites us. Actually, how my friend offered me the Bhagavad-Gita, he said that by reading this book you can learn the Devanagari, you can learn Sanskrit and Devanagari. Okay, let me, and I learned from the Bhagavad-Gita. So that was on the poster for Prabhupada's classes in early days in New York. Come to the Sanskrit classes. You can, and it's true. If you just read attentively, word for word, you will gather enough vocabulary within 3 months to understand the Sanskrit verses, at least roughly. You'll just need maybe some grammar brush up. So, having some topic that you research, maybe collecting quotes, that's also a helpful thing. So approaching the books with some questions will help us see how they are practical. Plus, if you make it, something you have to present, how this can be applied, then it's in this particular passage. That also kickstarts our brain or heart and into deep processing or understanding of the material. And again, it doesn't have to be really long. It can even be as little as, like, one of my friends, he recently got married, and he says he's very busy. So what he does, he records, he started a group of his friends on Telegram. He has, I don't know how many, 100 people there. And he just records a 5-minute passage from where he reads. So 5 minutes it's not long. Sometimes on the street, you can hear the cars or something honking. He's on the way to work or something. And at least it is a systematic schedule, and it gets him into the books, and he can add some discussion And this way he's processing and coming closely in touch with the mercy in the books.
Wow, that's two very practical suggestions. One is like an active reading where we
Questions.
Have questions. We have questions in mind, and then we approach the text. And in this way, we kind of maybe absorb more because we have a specific idea in mind. And the other one is also nice to share a reading with others. You mentioned that before also.
Yes.
I have something in mind you also mention in your teachings often, which in the seventh purpose of ISKCON, in the first one, it says that to educate people in techniques of spiritual life. What is a spiritual technique? Would you like to help us to understand?
I would very much like to discuss this. This is Srila Prabhupada's ambition to show that it's practical. And he wants us to be educated ourselves. So technique means that it actually works in our practical day-to-day life. And it elevates our condition and consciousness and in every regard. Now, if you study exactly which techniques, it's a rather large topic. One other place where he speaks about techniques will be in the third canto, where he indicates that this is how we interact with other people. So therefore, this is the main area for applying every technique for improving our life is in our interacting with seniors, juniors, and equals, and maybe those who are inimical. This is basically Madhyam Bhakta, intermediate devotee. You must practice these consciously to be an intermediate devotee. Advanced devotee on the second level of development, Prabhupada says in Canto 4, 11, 13. He mentions one before and one after verses. So main area of application of techniques is interaction, and if you do try to apply some of these techniques, you see that they work immediately. They work immediately. Like, and this is also how these techniques are described in the 11th canto, so 11.3.23. In Sanskrit, they're called Bhagavatam Dharman. They are Bhagavata Dharmas. So Dharma, no, it's religion, but it's not just religion, it's some higher order, practical way of acting in life, according to Srila Prabhupada. So there are about 30 techniques mentioned, or dharmas, and they begin with Dayam, Maitrim, Prashayam, Cha, mercy, friendship, and respect. So these are the very first. And Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, comes somewhere around 10, number 10. So it lays the ground for developing all the higher devotional qualities. So in other words, for a technique will be sadhana. Some action that you can consciously practice and offer for Krishna, for Krishna's pleasures, Krishna's pleasure.
Maybe coming along shortly towards an end, how do you think would ISKCON be different if actually all the devotees would regularly, every day, read Srila Prabhupada's books? What would that have an effect on our movement? What do you think?
Well, if we all read Srila Prabhupada's books in the proper way, well, we would all be happy, wealthy, and wise. In the words of a proverb. We would please Srila Prabhupada, because you see that Srila Prabhupada didn't sleep in the night to provide us the books. We would please Srila Prabhupada and please Krishna, because he's trying to give us mercy through his books. And I would hope that one of the main areas would be that by reading properly, we would be able to have more unity in diversity. In other words, we would respect the differences and be able to harmonize our differences on some higher principle. Because otherwise, Kanishta will also use quotes, will also use shlokas, but we will try to only fight. But although some discussions and disputes may be helpful and necessary, Siddhanta Bodhya Chitta Nakoro Alasa, we should not be lazy in discussing the Siddhanta, still there should be enough unity so that we live together and are able to sing together Hare Krishna and continue singing Hare Krishna for the next 10,000 years.
That's a very, very beautiful point that you mentioned in the beginning also, how Krishna, the books are actually a form of Krishna's mercy. So Krishna is very eager to give us transcendental knowledge, and Srila Prabhupada being a manifestation of that mercy, sacrificed so much to give the books. So
yeah, just imagine, you have worked so hard to give somebody a birthday gift and they don't even open the packet. So Krishna has invested so much mercy in these books. Prabhupada has invested, everybody, they invested so much. So if we just open them, that already makes them happy, somewhat.
What to speak of really absorbing and then also living according to that knowledge. You also mentioned about how we would be able to have more unity and diversity. It reminds me of the whole topic of hermeneutics, in the sense of finding ways to understand Srila Prabhupada's books in a more maybe sattvic way and have sattvic discussion.
Yes, we need to understand the whole beautiful philosophical framework of Krishna consciousness. There are different levels of truths, Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion. There are principles and there are details. So there are the most essential, there are second most essential, third most essential, important but not essential, non-essential and not important, illustrations, examples, analogies. So we have to see that not everything is absolutely of the same weight in Krishna's presentation. So by understanding what's the main point, it will help us probably, hopefully, to find some harmony. Or fight where important, if that's your game.
All right, thank you so much, Adipurush Prabhu, for giving us this deep insights in your understanding and realizations in regards to study Srila Prabhupada's books. Maybe I want to give you the final word. Is there something you would like to share with us? Some final thought?
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for studying. Thank you for bringing this to devotees' attention. So you can see Srila Prabhupada was really concerned with the books. And also this is one of the main missions that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given to the 6 Goswamis. And Srila Prabhupada, in his preface to the Nectar of Instruction, he says that how to enter Vrindavan and get some understanding of Radha Krishna's pastimes is to study the works of the 6 Goswamis. And Purnachandra Maharaj was quoting some story from his life, how he was distributing books. So now, shortly, we have Srila Prabhupada's marathon in December. So Purnachandra Maharaj said he was distributing books, and he offered a book to some guy in a parking lot, and the guy looked at the book, looked at him, and he said, "You're not yourself not reading these books." And he said, "Oh, Krishna told me this. It must have been Krishna." And he decided, okay, let me just see what's there in the books. And so by reading the books, he found they are interesting. He found some taste. So he started hiding. This was a little funny how in the early days you had to hide to read. That was considered almost like you're in Maya, that if you were reading Prabhupada's books. And it cut into his hours of book distribution, but then because he had some taste and he knew what the books say, he started distributing more and more and more and more. So it was beneficial on every level. So that's the mercy flow. This is how the mercy flows. So it all has to be properly balanced. We must chant and sing sufficiently. We must do some service. We must maintain the material side of life. We must study. We must read. We must have proper interactions with everybody in our life. This is how we put to practice all we have read. And the books are the light that allow us to properly direct all our activities. And this is Krishna's mercy in the palpable form. Mercy you can keep in your hand. Hare Krishna.
Wonderful to
Thank you.
absorb knowledge and also give the mercy to others in the form of distributing books or teaching as you do also. So thank you so much. And
Thank you. Thank you.
Ki Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.